Welcome back. My name is Audrey Shantz and I'm a watercolor artist and a watercolor teacher, and today we are going to paint these. They're just like a little happy planter. Aren't they so cute? So let's get started. All right, here's the supplies we need for today. This is what we're going to be doing, and we have a pencil and I have a kneaded eraser. These are great. They don't leave shavings on your paper. They're like a little fidget. If you don't have one, they're like $3. Grab one. Then we also need a brush. This is a Winsor & Newton size 10 round watercolor brush. This is my favorite. I teach on it. We just use one brush. It's got the tip of the brush and the belly of the brush, which is what holds the water. So if you have something similar to that, that's great. We will need our watercolor paints. This is the set that I've got, but anything you've got will be fine. We're going to take from here and make puddles on this side. Then I've got water and I've got a towel. And we will be needing some sort of an ink since we've got ink on the top. So you can use something like a felt tip pen. I like to use an ultra fine point Sharpie, but even if you just have a regular pen, that's great too. So those are our supplies. And we're gonna get started. So I'm moving all this stuff out of my way. I'm gonna pick which one we're gonna use as our guide. I think we'll do this blue one, but feel free to use any colors you want all along the way. A reminder to you that you are the boss of your art. This is one space. Nobody's the boss of you. So let's see. Excuse me. Okay, so we're gonna start with a line. Usually I like, you know what I didn't say? 3 by 3 inch piece of paper, and I realized I didn't say that on my last video either. 3 inches by 3 inches. This is cold press 140 pound watercolor paper. So from here, I like to start with either if there's a straight line or some sort of a horizon line, or sort of largest to smallest. But in this case, we do have that line. And if you'll look at this, look at that. My pencil just fits right perfectly on top of it. So you can use that as a guide. It's about that tall. Put a little mark if you think that's right. Check it out. And you can turn your paper if it's helpful. Use the bottom of your paper as the guide. And we're just going to turn it into a straight line. Light on your pencil. If you go light on your pencil, you can always freely erase, which means you can kind of do whatever you want. You know you'll be able to get rid of it, okay? And this is like a big rectangle, but before we start putting it onto the paper, let's observe a few things. It can't go too wide or we wouldn't have space for the handles. And we need all the space up here because really the flowers, I mean, they're sort of an equal feature, you know? So we don't want to go too tall with it. You could probably almost split the difference, maybe leave a little bit more space on top. So if I did that, maybe put a dot where you think it's going to go. And that looks good for me. I'm going to put a little dot. I like to call it the dot method. It maybe is called that. I don't know. And I'm going to leave space on either side. I almost could lay my finger down on either side. Maybe go a little more narrow than that though. And we're going to turn these 3 marks into a rectangle because we already have the bottom, right? So first I might do this and line this up with this. This is my guide now. And then maybe I'll straighten out these sides too. Then all I have to do, see how we've got curved corners, and that's real cute. So we'll just do some sort of curve, and you get to decide how big the curve is. But whatever it is, you probably want it to be somewhat consistent on all 4 corners. And if you find that your lines are crooked or whatever, press lightly on that pencil and you'll be able to erase. Great. We are not looking for perfection. It's not perfect, and that will do just fine. Before we get anywhere else, let's put a dot where we think center is. And then do you see this? It's just sort of like a square right in the middle of the forehead. I'm just looking that there's sort of equal space on either side. And if there's not, we won't worry about it, but cute. I did a little bit of rounded corners, at least on the bottom for that one too. All right, and now we are ready for the handles. I'll zoom in a little. The handles just need to start at the same height. So if you look at that, try the pencil trick again. You could almost fit a pencil between the top of him and the top of that handle, but not quite, something like that. And let's line them up first. Let's put a mark and see if they're going to be at the same spot. If you want to, you can line up the bottom of the handle, comes maybe all the way to here. There's a little more space on the bottom than the top, but there doesn't have to be, so you decide. I like to line them up, so that I know what I can expect. From here, I'll curve. Connect them into a curve. A little bit of a straight line on this side. You notice that part here? Same here, curve on, but on my curve, I'm looking for a bit of a straight line. You notice it isn't here and it is here, so whatever, we're not gonna, it's not perfect, that's okay. Let's connect it here. So this is called an aura, where you're just following the line you already created. My friend Kelly of Kelly Bluin, who does Minutes of Zen on YouTube, taught me that. She's the best, check her out. Okay, 1, 2, 3, we've got this. Why not put our face in? We'll just stick with him for a second. You can do it now with pencil or just later with pen, but it's always safer to test it out while you've got a pencil. So I like these little dots to be somewhat halfway between here and here. I'm gonna move it to the right a little bit. See, and then they need to be on the same level. And this smile is about the same width as the square above it. Press lightly, because if you don't like your first smile, you can move it. This one's different. It's okay, but this one's cuter to me, so I will erase it. And what I noticed I didn't like is it was too big, so a little smaller. Beep. I mean, that's cute. All right, let's get into our flowers. Let's count them first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This one has 7, yours doesn't have to. If we want to sort of copy what we see, we could start coming right out of the top center, curve up and to the right. It'll go this way. You put the stem on there first if you want, up and to the right. And then this can be a very light circle. Just go light. Light is the main part of that right now. And then look over here. This one comes out right above the eye, comes up, curves a little bit. They're not, look at this. You see the angle they're on? Right there. So come up to about here, circle. Great. And now we can fill in these little ones. Look, we just put the circles and then connect to the stems. We just plopped them in there. Don't overthink it. And let's add leaves while we're here. I'm just looking where I see them. Now, if yours doesn't fit the same because your stuff isn't in the same spot, you decide where the leaves go. I'm going to put this one here instead. I'm going to give this a stem and come this way with the leaf. So we're all adapting because we all have slightly different space now. I love this tall one. It just makes it a little disorderly, which I enjoy. So for this one, I'm actually going to place it all the way up here first. And you always could have done this way as well, where you make the circles first and then connect stems. Its stem looks like it comes all the way over here between the eye and the end of the square. So something like that, curve it down. Still press light because this might go through. Like for example, do you see this one overlaps? So I know I'll have to erase that line I just put on there. And then I'll do this one here, and I'll realize these are fluffy, but we're gonna do that with the pen, which is why I don't really wanna see this later. This is our guide for painting. I just added another stem, and now we're adding in our leaves. And I'll put it this way this time. One more stem. And then I'm going to erase any lines that go through our circles. So I'm getting rid of that one. So because I don't want to see this pencil later, I'm just going to make sure it didn't get too dark. I mean, don't make it where you can't see it. It's just that, you know, we can lighten it up a little bit. We'll end up painting with yellow, and then we'll do our sort of messy ink over the top. And it'll just be so much more noticeable. You won't really see the pencil. Okay, look at your sketch, see what you think. If you're finished with it, take your pencil, take your eraser, get them out of your way. It's like cooking while you clean. And we are gonna mix our paints. So I'm gonna pull our paints over, grab my brush. If you have a little spray bottle like this, you can spray your paints. Usually it's maybe 6 or 8 sprays, whatever. They just need to be kind of glossy. You do not even need it. And we're going to decide what colors we want to see. So if you look at these already, I like yellow. I think yellow is fun for these flowers. If you want a different color, make sure you get a light and something darker, because we'll be using 2 colors for those. And then see, I've got blue and a neutral, or a neutral and purple. I think part of the charm is the balance of a neutral plus a color. I'm going to get water on my brush, and I think I'm going to do the purples for this one. So the purple is, for me, it's on the bottom of my palette. I'm taking a swipe, putting it onto my palette. Right away, I'm going to add water. And that's too dark for me. So in watercolor, we add water to get our colors lighter. So I lightened it up, and I think that looks pretty good. So I got my purple. If you don't like this color, you're not done yet. Look, I'll add a little bit of pink to it. Ooh, even better. Okay, make sure you like it here. This is where we're testing it out. Now I'm going to get my neutral for the pot. For me, I'm going to choose some sort of a brown. And I cleaned my brush. I'm adding water because I didn't want it to be too dark. So take the pigment out of your brush to lighten it up and then add water. And it's very brown. I'm going to do the teeniest swipe of blue. Ooh, a little much. Now it's gray. I'm going to go back to brown. Did you see I'm just changing it, playing with it for a minute? Experiment with your colors. It's part of the fun of watercolor. Oh, goodness. I added water, so I lightened it up. Great. That is what I want. I can see through it pretty well. I can tell it's pretty light. Okay, before our water gets too dirty, let's get some yellows. I'm going to do maybe a combo of these two. But remember, we want a light and a dark, and the first one is our light. So I'm making this puddle. I'm cleaning out my brush. I'm maybe lightening it just a little bit. Make sure you like it. This is that time. That's probably good. And then I'm going to take, see on my palette, there's this color. It's like mustardy. It's over by the brown. That's called yellow ochre. And I'm going to take a little bit of that. I want a little puddle of it. For this one, less water. Because I know I'm doing a wet on wet technique where we'll start with our light color and we'll add dark into it. That I already know I'll have water on my first layer. Okay, and I might, when I get to it, I might take right from this paint instead of my puddle. So we've got those. We need green. And I don't know, I like both. This one's a little yellower, this one's a little green, even hinting towards blue. I think I'll go with this one though. So pick a color, test it out. I kind of like it being like darker. There's some contrast there, so I'm going to leave like that. And I am all set. I'm cleaning my brush out. I'm going to move my paints over. Okay, try to do this where you can see as much as you can. There we go. So the thing that's important is that we don't work next to wet paint. So for today, I think let's go ahead and do our pot first. And you know what? We need one more color. So we've got our light, but see how there's darkness around the edges? That will actually be sort of whatever color you took. Mine came from here. It's going to be a little bit of that. I could either make a tiny puddle first like this to work from, or I could have taken from my paints because I know there's already water on there. See, it's a little bit puddly. So we're going to load paint into it. So for this first one, my brush is clean and dry. I'm going to put maybe half of my brush into here so it doesn't get out of control. And I'm just going to fill in this rectangle, avoiding the square in the center. So it should feel a little bit like you're moving a puddle around. Okay, if it's drying while you work, you need more water. If you feel out of control, you have too much water. And so I'm just filling this in. I want it all to touch, and I actually kind of want it all to dry at the same time. So that's a clue to you. Like that's how you'll get a really nice wash. If it was puddling or pooling, I would take my brush, clean it, and like just dry it on your towel, and I would just touch anywhere that had extra paint and lift it. So that's an example. But now while it's wet, and this is, I call watercolor bossy, okay, but while it's wet, I have to load in this extra color. So I'm just touching these edges. I'm gonna grab a little bit more. I think you can handle a little bit more color. See that? I'm just touching it, and I'm letting the water pull the paint for me. I'm not doing it myself. Just touching it. See, I'm swiping it and leaving it. So I'm gonna do it around these edges, so the sides and the bottom. Just think shadow, where it might be shadowed, and look at that. It's like messy. Let it be. Let it be loose. It's okay. You could try to do some of this under the handles right now. You can see that part dried, actually. It's a good example. But you could just wait till it dries and do it if you wanted it. See, that was already dry, so I'm just wetting it the teeniest bit to get it to do what I want. And now I need to let that dry. I see it's pooling right here. I don't know if you can tell, there's a bit of a puddle. I'm gonna take my brush and touch it, and then touch my towel. I just kind of took back a little control over there, and it should dry a little nicer. So this needs to dry. I don't want to work right next to it, so I'm going to get into our yellow flowers. I'm going to clean my brush, dry my brush. Now these are small, so I don't need a lot of water on here. I'm going to take maybe the tip of my brush, the first third, get that yellow paint, and I'm going to fill it in. Think of it just a circle. See that? Blobs. Blobs. That's all we need for right now. I'm going to darken my color just a hair. Okay. Now I did 4 of them. I meant to do less at a time. If you do less, you'll have more control. So I've got those 3. If they're puddling or pooling, I will dry my brush, lift a little bit of that extra water out, and then from there I'm going to go to that mustard. Remember, we created that teeny puddle of mustard, so we have control. And think about this like a little smiley face. We're going to boop, boop, boop. Just going to touch it or swipe it on there. I'm grabbing a little bit more paint than that. Watch and see what happens. You know, if the mustard goes all the way across, you have too much water. The water is what pulls it so far. And if it won't even, let's say it won't even blend, you needed a little bit more water. So I've got those 4. I'm going to leave them. They're going to look even different when they dry. I'm going to clean out my brush, get that mustard out of there, grab that light color again, and I'll do my last 3. These 2 are touching. So I know that if they're touching, those colors are going to bleed. I could let it be, or I could dry it and wait. I think I'm gonna risk it, but you could just wait, you know, because they're touching. I think I'll just kind of put this where it's not so close to the other. So I got one in. Do this one because that's not touching the other. Now the longer you let this dry, I mean, that helps too, but I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna add just the tiniest bit. So the way I'm keeping control is very little water. What a cutie. Okay, cleaning out my brush. I think this is a really good time to dry it because then we're free to do everything else. So if you've got a little heat gun, this is what I've got. It's a little craft heat gun, or if you've got a hair dryer, or if you just want to wait a minute till it's dry, then we'll go from there. The way you know it's dry enough is if you lift it up and you can't see the light reflecting on it. That's usually a good sort of way to do it. Okay, we're getting into purple because I just need to see it. I love it so much. So I'm going to dip the tip of my brush into my water only because these are small spaces and I want control. Or right into your paint. It's up to you. And I'm going to fill in the square. I'm not worrying too much about details. You notice it's a blob. Good to go. Get my paint again. And this, I want you to lean into the belly of your brush as you swipe across. You're filling it in so efficiently that it'll dry really lovely. Done. If it took you more than one swipe, no big deal, but it's kind of fun to have little challenges. So I dried my brush, just touched this to lift up a little bit of that water so it's not puddling or pooling. We're almost there, guys. Okay, we're gonna get into our leaves. And clean dry brush. If you're grabbing water as you're adjusting your green paint, you're only dipping the tip of your brush in. That's how you're going to maintain control. And when we do things like this, you want your brush to be very perpendicular to your paper, so you have a very fine point, and you're going to do very little pressure. So you can put your pinky down like a little support pinky if that's helpful, and you're going to run your brush right along the stem and fill in that leaf. It does not matter how you fill in the leaf. There's no test, okay? So you can run your brush like this. We're trying for skinny lines, so light on your pressure. If you went like this and you quickly sort of outlined it and filled it in, nobody knows how you did it. If you did it like this and tried for a brush stroke that just covers it, you know, have fun with it, but don't worry. Okay, and you can tell on this one it's less wet. Here I have more color bleeds where the green went into the yellow because I allowed it to touch without it being fully dry. If you want to see more color bleeds, then work next to it while it's still wet, but just try to pay attention to how wet, because we want little color bleeds. We don't want a total loss of control. Oh my goodness, isn't it so cute already? All right, we're going to dry it one more time because we're going straight into the ink next. So you can either wait or dry it. And this is the part where we just kind of get cozy. For a thinner line, you could use a felt tip pen. I like mine a little bit thicker. I'll be using this ultra fine point Sharpie. Mostly we're going over our pencil, but we are not doing that for the flowers. So maybe we should start with them first. And here, I'll turn one over first. And if we had our pencil and we had a circle like this, think fuzzy, jagged, sketchy. Do you see this? It's just a little bit loose. I'm not even connecting my lines. And I think that takes some of the stress away versus it having to be one continuous line. And inside of there, you might go fuzzy again, but just thinking circular. The whole thing is circular, so I wouldn't do a line this way, right? I would do it so it follows that curve. And we're gonna get into it. I like to go left to right, just fuzzy, jagged. If you've got pencil lines that you can see real strongly, you might just want to go over them. Like I have one here, I'll just, boop, gone. Because the pen is so much more bold. Then I'm going to also follow, I like to do just one line when I've already got a thin stem. So I'll just do my ink just to the right of my green, but I will outline my leaves. And just think carefree, happy. These are cheerful little flowers, aren't they? You can outline both sides. You do anything you want. I think we're doing this one first just as a reminder that it was not on our pencil, but once you finish with these flowers, you're basically going over your pencil exactly as it was and then adding those little stripes right into the square on his forehead. And it's funny, I've done this a lot of times. They're different every single time. Could put some dots in there. See that? That's cute. I don't put any stress on one individual piece of artwork. I mean, unless it's like really complex and I'm far into it or something. But like for stuff like this, I mean, it's just a piece of paper. And when you can think of it like that, you really release yourself into not putting pressure on what you're doing. And you could go like, I'm going to sit down because I love painting and I'm going to make 5 of these. And you know what? My favorite one, I might stick in a little card for someone or put on a greeting card for someone. And it just takes the pressure off the one you're working on. I had painted on here this little dark line to give like a shadow under the handles, and I realized we didn't do that. So here's another way, a couple vertical lines like that, and you're gonna get that same idea of just darkening it up a little bit to where it would be shadowed. And then I'm gonna do this part. I'm cleaning this up. So remember I went a little messy with it? I don't care. Just cleaned it up with that really nice straight line. And then some horizontal lines. Just start looking for the same distance between them. See how mine aren't even ending at the same spots? I just don't care. If you care though, line them up on the sides. We'll do some. So I like that we did eyes that are just black dots. If we would have done eyes that had a circle of white around them, we would have needed to paint around it since we go light to dark and you can't get your white back. Does that make sense? See how they're all a little bit different? Oh, are they cute or what? You could put a line here at the like tabletop if you want. That's up to you. Make sure you sign your artwork. And you did it. This is a fun one. I am planning on putting these out every Wednesday. You can find them under Audrey Shantz Art. If you subscribe to my channel, you'll find them there. And then also they're titled Wednesdays Watercolor, so you can find them that way too. And I hope to see you next week. Thanks.